In my latest video presentation on marriage, I made a statement. That statement was, is monogamy sinful? I mentioned that so many people were prepared to put polygamy on trial on the internet. So I thought, well, why don't we turn this around? Let's look at monogamy. Let's put monogamy on trial. At least what we're calling monogamy. But since this is my presentation, I'm the one that sets the parameters. I'm the one that sets the boundaries. And people are welcome to come forth with their parameters and their boundaries. But I'm the one that has to set forth these boundaries. And I'm praying that I set them forth fairly and truly. You know, I want to be forthright in this. And I really believe that, again, as I stated in my most recent video prior to this video, was that the real problem is that people don't know what marriage is. And I maintain that is the real problem. People get married, and even though they know they are marrying, and they know that, okay, they know they are becoming one flesh together, that they don't really understand what that means. They don't really comprehend what that entails. And there's a lot of people today calling marriage, and it isn't marriage, okay? It's fornication is what it is. F is for fornication. F is for failure, and F is for a lot of other things, right, people? And lots of people think that, you know, marriage is that other F word. And, you know, I mean, seriously, you know, if you believe that marriage is fornication, because that's really what that other F word is, it's fornication, okay, then I feel sorry for you. I'm sorry that you have such a horrible opinion about marriage, that you believe that marriage is fornication. Unfortunately, I'm hard-pressed to agree with you that sometimes it is. And I'm really sorry to have to admit that, yes, in fact, more times than I'm prepared to even want to admit. You know, yeah, that's what it is. It's fornication. It's not marriage. It's just fornication. Yeah, I had to think about that for a while because, you know, I'm going to make a confession to my listeners. In my young, in my young age, in my youth, I was very worldly, and I hadn't really, fully come around to Jesus. Oh, I knew he was there, but I tried to dodge him. But you can't dodge the husbandman. You can't dodge him. Okay, the husbandman, he if you're one of his, you can run, but you can't hide. Okay, he's there, the husbandman, the bridegroom. And I'm going to tell you something. Jesus knows them that are his. You can't hide from God. Okay, there it is. 4:20, 4 minutes and 20 seconds into it already. Is monogamy sinful? Is it? Now, I don't believe that inherently monogamy is sinful. I personally think that monogamy is exactly how the first union between a man and a woman occurred. I really do believe that. I don't have a problem with that. I think that monogamy is a wonderful thing when it is practiced in spirit and in truth. But for those who have, there's that F word, failed to practice it, okay, in spirit and truth, they should not let on as though they are now in monogamous relationships when they are not. Okay? And people who practice it are not necessarily the genuine article, okay? Because they're just practicing, okay? They're playing house. They are actually convincing themselves that they're monogamous, okay? The people are actually achieving it. The people are actually executing monogamy in this world. People are actually doing it, okay? Are actually living true to the purest definition of monogamy, okay, are very few and far between. And I salute them, and I'm glad that they are doing what they can to maintain honor and virtue in marriage. It makes it possible for people like me to uphold marriage, by the way. I don't knock monogamy. In fact, there is a type of monogamy that's practiced every time they twain become one flesh, okay? But in the purest and truest, most basic form, monogamy, without the window dressing, okay, without all the government sanctioned Scotty paper, tissue paper, okay, with the fancy embroidery and all that other glitz, window dressing, okay, without all that. Marriage, in its purest, most basic form, happens when a man who has never known a woman, never copulated with a woman, okay, joins to a woman who has never known another man in the biblical sense, and they twain become one flesh. There you go, that's monogamy. And they stay that way until death does one of them part, okay? That is monogamy. Anything outside of that, okay, is not the genuine article, okay? It is not the real thing. It is not monogamy. And don't kid yourself, sir, ma'am, if you've known another man, or sir, if you've known another woman, okay, prior, you are not a monogamist, okay? You might be practicing monogamy, but you are not a monogamist. Let's be very clear on this. Let's be honest. Let's call a thing what it is. I'm imploring my listeners to be honest with themselves and their hearts before God. I am not saying, look, you have to conform to my definition of things. I am trying to say this is the deal. We need clarity, and we need clear-cut, crisp definitions, boundaries, if you will, in our language if we're going to be articulate when we communicate with one another in the English language. Stop adding extra definitions to words to cloud up the waters or muddy up the waters, as it were. Let's call a thing what it is. Now, that's monogamy. I've just defined monogamy for you, okay? And, a woman, when she joins to the first man that she has ever known in her life, okay, is definitely monogamist, okay? She's a monogamist for as long as she stays married to that man, okay? If her husband dies and she remarries, she can practice monogamy with that next husband, okay? But she is not a monogamist anymore, no, because by the truest, most early definition of the word bigamy, she is a bigamist, okay? Even if she marries as a widow, she has married now 2 husbands, okay? She cannot call herself, by the truest, purest sense of the definition of monogamy, a monogamist. People are robbing monogamists, okay? Those who actually do the deed, those who actually not only just practice it, but have become it. Those people, well, okay, I'm going to go back to that study. I really hate to go back to this study because if I had remembered the guy's name, but at the time that I was doing my research, it didn't even seem that all important to me. At that time I was doing my research, I was actually all very preoccupied with the idea that I was wrong about marriage. And I had collected a whole bunch of data from this university student, and we did some net surfing together, and we compared notes. And wow, what a phenomenally incredible experience that was for me. Very hard for me to forget. But this gentleman, this is the same gentleman who had the stats on North America, not just Canada, not just the United States, and not just Mexico, but all of North America. This guy did widespread general geographics, or what are they called? Demographics. Yeah, demographics. Man, I really wish that I could get his material again. I feel so foolish. But, this is the thing about the internet. I can't go back 10 years to look something up anymore. You're hard-pressed to go back 5, 6 years on the internet now. No, something's going on with the internet, friends. It's not like it used to be. But I digress. I do that. 69.3 something percent. That's all I remember. Okay? Of marriages in North America end in divorce or separation. Okay? And or separation. So there you go. 69.3%. That, I would say, if we are talking about the definition of monogamy, in this light, okay, I think it bears some examination, what we call monogamy. Because if our governments, that means, the secular government, the godless government, because secular means godless, okay, if they would feign or deign to uphold monogamy, then I think something really bears examination here at 69.3%. Canada might say, yeah, well, that's a pretty general figure, and I would be fine. I could agree with that. I would not be averse to agree that it's North America is pretty general. All us Americans here, okay, it's pretty general. That's true. It's very general. North America, is very general, and maybe Canada doesn't really have a 69.3% divorce and separation rate. Maybe it's just all down south there that they're all bad, okay. But maybe Canada is only 66.6%. Maybe Canada is only 66.6%. Maybe it's only 56%. I really doubt it. Brother, sister, are you listening to me? Do you really believe that only 56% of marriage in Canada, let's narrow it down to Canada, okay, ends in divorce and separation? With all the separations I've seen going on all around me, I don't think so. We got to factor in that separation aspect. This guy was right on, look, people staying together, cohabitating, and people not cohabitating in marriage. Like, he was very good. He knew how to cut to the chase. That's why I loved his demographics. I really wish I had his material, and I really am sorry. If anybody out there knows which study I was talking about, please, get a hold of me on Facebook. If you know me, Edward King, because I would really like to get my hands back on that study. Very, very in-depth, very accurate, and not just covering, not just picking on one nation, but the entire continent of North America, the entire, geography. I like that, because he had it down, where he'd have the hot spots, you know what I mean? He had the map, the hot spots, and everything. It was just fantastic to look at. Anyway, let's be honest. Plus 60 sounds pretty close, and that's really bad. I mean, ideally, no marriage should end in divorce. I think most of us would agree with that. Ideally, if you're going to get married, you put your nose to the grindstone, you make your bed of roses, you lie in it. Okay? Ideally speaking. But if we're going to call this monogamy, then I would say monogamy has failed, and I give monogamy the big F. Okay? And I put a circle around that big F. And F is for failure, and F is for fornication. And monogamy has failed, if that's what the government wants to call it, the licensing of marriage by our secular, godless government. I put a big F on it. It has failed miserably. And now I think we should butt it up alongside polygamy, especially polygamy in other nations, okay? And now I think after we put them side by side, North American so-called monogamy and butted up alongside other world polygamy. Okay, let's lay these two tablets beside one another. Okay, now let's mark underneath each tablet the percentage of divorce. Monogamy, 69.3% North America. Other countries, friend, are you ready? Hang on to your shorts. Listen, hold your seats. Listen, not even one digit. Did you hear me? Not even one digit. Excuse me. Who should be on trial here? Who should be on trial? I think it's time to put the monogamists, so-called, on trial. Because guess what, friends? There are very few true, genuine articles. Monogamy. Monogamy. If you can lay claim to that and say that you are with the partner, only partner you've ever known in your life, good for you. God bless you. And if you pride yourself in that, God bless you. You know, I pray you don't fall. I pray that you were formed in your mother's womb for monogamy. Okay, but some of us weren't. Some of us were not formed in our mother's womb for monogamy only. Okay, that's the truth. And, you know, I don't think that those of us who are not formed in our mother's womb to be monogamists only deserve the rap we get. Because we're born into this ignorance. We are steeped in this ignorance. And this ignorance tells us that it has to be monogamy only. Okay? And so we are forced up against our flesh and what our God-given right is, and struggling, and the devil knows it and takes advantage of what God made us to be. Now, what sort of man would be made to carry on his father's seed in such a generous mode? You know, what man? Why would God grant one man to be fruitful and multiply to that extent, where he might have 4 wives, for example? Why would God ever do that with a man? Well, friend, you know, there's a thing called the remnant. There's a thing called war, and there's a thing called the mercy of the Lord. Okay? And when the good Lord sets some seed aside, because he already knows the rest of it's all gone corrupt, and he lets all that seed get killed off by the war, okay, he sets some seed aside. All right? He says, he calls it the remnant, by the way. Read it. Read it. It's in your Bible. All right? He sets that seed aside and he says, that seed should be fruitful and should multiply. Give that seed another chance. Maybe it will render something worthy this time. But, you know, I digress. That's the sort of man God will set aside for polygamy. Okay? I'm not saying all are called to polygamy, but I am saying that some are. And, you know, I am really sorry. I am really sorry that I ignored my master's voice for so long in my youth and squandered my youth on wine, women, and song. I am really sorry that so many of my marriages ended in failure. But you see, part of the reason is because I didn't regard them as marriages. And my partners did not regard them as marriages either. You know, at best, maybe we regarded these things as unions, okay? But basically, we all just like to fornicate around, right? We fornicated around. I'm having a cup of my Java here, my beloved monogamist wife's coffee. Oh, she makes good coffee. I'll keep buying coffee for her if she keeps making coffee like this. Wow, my wife makes good coffee. Anyway, getting back to my point about marriage, about monogamy, about what monogamy really is. Okay, if you've known any other person than your partner, your spouse, don't call yourself monogamist. I don't care if you're only practicing monogamy now. Okay, you do not wash away a marriage. Okay, you cannot wash away a marriage. You know why? Because marriage in and of itself inherently is not a sin. Okay, it is something that God had ordained himself. Now, you know, I mean, picture this, okay? men out there, because I don't know if ladies will get this, but men out there, imagine your father, okay? He's a good father. He's a loving father, okay? And you know, you are very special in his eyes. And he comes up to you and he says he has a gift for you. And he hands you a sword, and it's made of the finest metal, okay? The finest metal in the land. The finest sword money can buy. The very best sword. And I mean, this thing is so sharp you can shave with it. Okay? It's so, you know, articulate. An articulate sword. It's called the sword of the word. Let's say you take that sword, some of you might have caught that. You take that sword and you start bashing it against the rock. You bash the edge against the rock. Okay? What happens to that sword over time? Okay, well, I'm here to help you sharpen your sword. Okay? The good Lord gave you something. Use it right. Don't bash it against the rock. Don't take the edge off your sword. You know, if you're honest before God, you'll know what monogamy is. You'll keep the edge. You'll know what it is, and you'll keep the edge. But some of us, the Lord has definitely ordained to marriage, plural. But most of us don't know it. We're born into it, and instead what we do is we fornicate because we don't know what's going on. Because the enemy has blinded us to our rightful heritage in the Lord. Monogamy, so-called, needs to be put on trial because, first of all, it isn't monogamy. It's a bunch of pretenders. It's a bunch of people with skeletons in their closet dancing and pretending like they've only known each other when they haven't, okay? And they're feigning monogamy. They are not really practicing monogamy. Now back to the demographics. This man actually calculated it to be less than 2% of marriageable adults actually do indeed practice and become monogamists. They practice monogamy and are monogamists. This is what his demographic estimated it to be. We're talking about marriageable adults here who are married, right? We're not talking about teenagers or adolescents or infants. We're talking about this group of people that he examined. He estimated about, based on all his data, a little. See, in some areas it was a little over 2%. You know, some of the rural communities, he found that these people pretty much measured up to everything. You know, if they were being honest and not telling a lie, they went that high. A whole 2+% of that community actually not only practiced monogamy, they became monogamists. They were true blue. They were the genuine article. Okay? You know, that's great. I applaud them. Perhaps they were made in their mother's womb to be so. You know, for the most part, women are indeed made to be monogamists. You know, it's kind of ironic, but somebody put it to me, you know, men are really just polygamists. Women are not. You know, and in a way, in a manner of speaking, that's true. That holds water. Okay? But, you know, sometimes a woman is widowed and she must remarry. See, do you understand what I'm saying? You know, here are pastors saying remarriage is of the devil, but yet my Bible's telling me that a widow may remarry. You know that it was actually stated in the scripture that forbidding to marry was one of the signs of the end times. Okay? It was not well spoken of, forbidding to marry. But forbidding to marry takes on all forms. There are all kinds of forms of, forbidding to marry. You know, you've got those people in the Roman Catholic farce. Okay? In the Roman Catholic farce, they forbid to marry their bishops, their popes. Okay? It's a farce. Okay? But that's not the only kind of forbidding to marry. There are churches or pastors forbid a woman to remarry even when her husband has died. Okay? There are all kinds out there, people. Okay? Or they forbid a man. They forbid a man to marry because maybe once in his youth he had married. Yet, it doesn't matter, by the way, with a lot of these, it's really funny about these organizations. It doesn't matter. If you didn't sign a piece of paper, then it's okay. It's just sin, and it could be swept under the carpet, and it doesn't count. Are you joking? In the eyes of the Lord, brother, it counts. Doesn't matter if it's a piece of paper associated or connected. Jesus isn't going to ask you for your marriage license. Okay? He knows who you became one flesh with. All right? And he knows how many times a person has taken something so sacred and cast it under their feet like a piece of filth. F is for filth. Okay? And that's sad. It's really sad because God ordained marriage to be a beautiful, sacred, and sanctified thing, a holy thing. Don't kid yourself. God called marriage one flesh. Monogamy, so-called, needs to be put on trial. We need to butt up our statistics and look at what we see with respect to arranged marriages, what we see with respect to so-called polygamy. I'm not talking about worldly polygamy. Please. If we're going to look at stats like that, worldly polygamy, wake up, people. The majority of you are polygamists, okay? And if you have been with more than one sex partner in your lifetime, you have already practiced polygamy. See, that's why people don't want to admit. They don't want to admit that it's marriage. Jesus said that marriage can be adultery. Whoever marries another man's wife commits adultery, said our Lord, okay? So that means you can marry a man's wife, right? The Lord said so. And it's called adultery when you do, okay? That was my first clue. That's what really set it home for me. What marriage really was and why God called it one flesh, okay? Why you didn't have to have a wedding ceremony in order for it to be a marriage, for example, okay? What God called marriage and what man is calling marriage, oh my goodness. Get your definitions clear, okay? Our Creator is the one who defined what marriage is. And it's when a man and a woman join in the flesh to become one flesh. That's marriage, okay? With or without a certificate, with or without the sanctioning of Caesar, okay? It's still marriage. When a man commits his flesh to a harlot, okay? When he commits his flesh to a harlot for his pleasure, he hath married her. It may be fornication. He may have taken marriage and reduced it to that big F with the circle around it. Okay? But there it is. There it is. I think monogamy needs to be put on trial. And I'll get back to you on this because I think monogamy itself is not sinful, not in and of itself. I don't believe it is. Not under the true definition of monogamy. The truest and purest and godliest definition of monogamy. Okay? It is not a sin, any more than good and godly polygamy is a sin. There you go. Okay? But I think I need to continue a little bit more with it because I need to elaborate what real monogamy is, and I need to explain how monogamy is found in polygamy. It's really important to understand that our definitions must be clear on monogamy. But monogamy on trial. Is monogamy a sin? No, but it can be sinful. Monogamy, and I'll save that for the next one. Yes, that's right. You can actually use monogamy to commit a sin. Yes, brothers and sisters, you can take that fine sword of the word and you can bang it against a rock and you can lose your edge. That's what's happening today, brothers and sisters. All the churches, they're losing their edge. They're all banging their swords against the rock, the sword of the word. They're mushing it up and making it hard to understand. It's not clear anymore. There's no definition. There's no soundness to it. God bless you all. God bless you. Thanks for listening.